Hello everyone, DR here. I wanted to show you guys how to make a gasket for your 4-cylinder engine. Woo! So the engine we have on the bench today, I got from Princess Auto for a crazy deal. And the reason I got it for such a good deal is because it was seeping oil right here through the front case. Now, it was such a good deal that I couldn't pass it up. And after taking the cover off here, I noticed that the original gasket was actually cracked. And I thought today would be a great opportunity for me to show you how to make your own gasket. Now, this isn't using the silicone. This is making a gasket with gasket material. Now, I could just go online and buy a gasket set for this engine. I can buy the whole set. They are available, but I only need one gasket. So instead of buying a whole set and waiting for shipping, I figured I'd just make one here in my shop. Making gaskets is really easy, and it's great to know how for when you have older machines. When you have machines where they're really hard to find gaskets or even parts for. Now, there's different types of gasket material for different applications. Cork is great for oil, coolant, and gasoline. Rubber cellulose is great for water and coolant. And the fiber gasket is great for oil, coolant, and gasoline. And today we're going to be using the fiber gasket material for our engine. Now, the fiber sheet that we're going to be using today is a roll that I got from Canadian Tire for about 20 bucks. I've already used it on a couple other projects. It's great. It has served me well, and I've had it for about a year already. When you're working with older motors or engines that are hard to find parts for, which I am constantly, I always keep a roll on hand because when you want to see if something works right away, you don't want to spend your time on the internet looking for gaskets, a gasket set, or spend the money. You can always have a set or a roll of these lying around and you can just make it right on the bench. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clean around the area that we're going to be using to make our new gasket. Fortunate enough for me, there's only a little bit of material left over that I'm going to have to clean off because it was a new engine. On older engines, the gaskets are a lot harder to get off, and normally there's a lot more crud left on that you're going to have to clean off. When we clean it off, we ensure that we get a good seal for when we put our engine back together. Now, to clean it, you're going to be using a Scotch-Brite pad and some brake cleaner. What you're going to want to do is take your brake cleaner, spray a bit on your Scotch-Brite pad, and work the surface that we're going to be using to make our new gasket. Now, you want to make sure you get all of the crud off, because when you go and put your gasket on, if there's any material left over here, what's going to happen is it's going to actually raise the new gasket, and it'll raise it just enough so oil can potentially pass through it, and you do not want that. So work the area, get all of the old gasket off. On older engines, this will take a lot of elbow grease, and you might even want a little bit of emery cloth to take it down. Now, make sure when you're scraping this off or scrubbing it off that you are working the sides evenly. I'm not a huge fan of using the emery cloth because what you are doing essentially, if you're using emery cloth, is you can actually sand down low spots on your crankcase cover as we have here. If you do that, it will warp it, and then when you go to put it on, no matter how perfect your new gasket is, it will cause oil to go through it or go past it. Now that you've removed all of the old gasket, you want to take a cloth and you want to clean away all of the brake cleaner. Make that surface nice and smooth. We don't want anything that could potentially harm the new gasket that we are going to be putting on. Now that we've cleaned the surface that we're going to be using to make our gasket, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut out a section of my gasket material here just to make it a little bit more manageable. Now that I've cut out a section of my gasket material, I'm going to lay my crankcase cover over top like this. Now, I could take a pencil and I could trace around my crankcase cover and cut it out, but I've got a little bit of an easier trick to help you when you are making your new gasket. We're going to take our crankcase cover and we are just going to lay our gasket material over top. All right, we want to make sure that there's plenty of space on either side. Now that we have it over top, we are going to hold down our gasket material nice and firm. Take a ball peen hammer, all right, and just with the ball peen hammer, you're just going to rub around the inside and the outside of the area that you are using to make your new gasket. Now for my crankcase cover here, what I'm doing is I'm making an imprint of my new gasket. Now the hardest part of doing this is trying to figure out how to cut the inside. But by doing this, what you are doing is you are actually making a bit of a relief. You are getting the end of the ball peen hammer and you are making a mark on your gasket material that will help you cut out the inside of your gasket later on. And make sure you hold the gasket nice and firm. You don't want it shifting on you at this point. All right, and you don't want to put a ton of pressure down with the ball peen hammer. All right, don't tap it because you don't want to mar the surface that we need to put our new gasket over. We don't want to give it any edges or ridges here. We want it nice and flat so that when we marry it back up to our engine, there won't be any high or low spots. You can already see that we are getting a nice relief with our ball peen hammer. This isn't rocket science, and if it's not perfect, that's okay. As long as we have enough material on the inside and outside, more is always better. Not enough? You might want to do it again. Take your time. And remember, even pressure. Don't worry about damaging the surface underneath your gasket material because the material will actually protect it from being scratched. Anywhere that I know that the bolts are going to go through, I am going to just make an effort, go around in circles so that I get a clear outline of where those bolts are going to be and where I need to trace and cut out later. If it shifts on you a little bit, you'll know right away because the surface pattern will change on the inside of your gasket. Again, too little, you want to do it again. Not enough, again, you want to do it again. A little bit too much, perfect. You're not going to harm the engine if you have a little bit more gasket material than you will if you have a little bit less. Looking at my gasket, I can already see the outline that will end up being cut for our gasket, our new gasket here. Now that looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it around, all right? Being careful not to move it. Okay, I've got my hand on the end, on the bottom there, I should say. I'm going to flip it around like this. Now because I put so much pressure on it, I can actually see around here where I have made my indent in my material. So I can actually line it up to that. Line up there, line it up right there. If I go down there, I know that that needs to come up, that needs to come down, that needs to come over. Perfect. Now that we've got it all nice and lined up, I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to trace around. I can leave my oil filler caps in because I can just follow that line when I'm done tracing. Make sure you go around it a couple times so that you don't miss any areas, as well as don't forget to get the inside holes where the bolts are going to be going through. Just a regular pencil is great for that, because normally they fit into the holes where the bolts go quite easily. Perfect. We'll bring it up. Look at that. There's the area that we need to cut out for our new gasket. So now what you want to do is you want to find any areas that you might think need to be traced over again. I'm looking at this. This is actually where my filler hole is for my oil. And that's okay, because if we look on the inside here, we notice that this doesn't actually adhere to our engine. It's on the inside here. So what I'll do is I will follow the line. And yes, it will give me a little bit more material, but again, a little bit more material is better than not enough. Following over here, I see my edge. And again, the filler hole was right there. So I can just follow the line here. Now, if I kept rubbing with my ball peen hammer, it would have actually cut through my gasket. But because I've got a good imprint here, I figured I would cut it out with the X-Acto knife. Now, I could use the imprint and just go by eye, but I like to make things nice and easy for myself. So I'm going to take a pencil and I'm just going to trace over the area of my inside of my gasket here. That way it will help me identify where I need to cut and limit the possibility of me cutting through the gasket. Again, I like to leave a little bit more of the gasket material than a little bit less, because at the end of the day, if a little bit more gasket material hangs into your crankcase, it's not going to damage your engine. And because this is just a 2 or 4 stroke engine, just a run-of-the-mill snowblower engine, I'm really not that concerned about it. If you were making this for a car, a vintage car, couldn't find gaskets for it, or you just want to see if it's going to work, you might want to be a little bit more precise. But again, at the end of the day, a little bit too much is always better than not enough. Now that I've traced and checked to make sure everything fits perfectly, take my X-Acto knife and I am going to cut the inside out first. Now, be careful that you do not put too much pressure in on it so that you run out and cut your gasket. If you cut too much, again, that's okay. If the gasket overhangs on the inside, that is not the end of the world. Now I'm pulling towards me with my X-Acto knife, and I've got my finger on the table for better control. Now that I've cut through, if there's any areas that you have missed or you weren't putting enough pressure on, like this, just go again with the X-Acto knife and cut them off. Don't rip them off. I know it's very tempting to do so. If you do that, you run the risk of cutting your gasket. And look at that. Came right out. So now we have the inside of our gasket done. Now what we can do is we can go ahead with our X-Acto knife, or in my case, my big metal shears, which will be my scissors for today. I can go around and cut the outside out. Perfect, all cut out. I'm gonna go ahead and I am going to line this up one more time just to make sure everything's hunky-dory. Perfect. Wow. Ooh. Ah. Now you might see some of the inside of our gasket here, or of our surface that we're putting a gasket on. That's okay because this has not yet been lined up. It's going to be a little loosey-goosey before we line everything up. But I have plenty of gasket material on here, so I'm not worried about any areas that might be showing at the moment. Now, our next step is to cut the holes out for the bolts to slide through. Now, what I'm going to use, you can use an X-Acto knife to cut them out, but what I have is this hollow punch set. And this set is great because you can use it to punch out the holes. The hollow punch set, I got it from Princess Auto. It was on sale for $15. And I love it because I use it to, like I said, seamlessly punch any of the holes out. It creates a perfect circle, and all you need to do is go around and tap it with a hammer. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to find any areas that I know need to be punched out, like this area here. Hold it firm. And look at that, punches a hole right out. So you just go around and you punch all of the holes that you need for your bolts on your cover here. One here. Now that we've cut out our new gasket, we're going to double check our accuracy by lining it up to our engine. Now, we've got our little guide pins here. We can snug it on. And as you can see, it fits very, very nicely. Now again, the holes are a little bit bigger than they could be, but that is okay because that won't in any way damage the gasket or limit our engine's performance. So once it's on, I'll take my crankcase side cover, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to slide it on so that it matches the surface of our engine. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've torqued down all the bolts. You can see that we have a really nice connection between our crankcase side cover and our engine itself. And you can see the gasket here. I've also gone ahead and I've put oil in this. So you can see that we don't have any more leakage at the bottom here, which means that our gasket works great. Well, thank you very much everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. This has been R&R Restorations. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or queries, comment down below and I will answer them and try to help you out. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.